2017, bringing together developers, artists, and entrepreneurs, Game Jam Plus is the biggest game development competitive marathon in the world. In those 5 years, we reached 2,800 participants in 100 cities in 30 different countries, and we participated in over 600 game projects. With the power of cooperation, almost 800 volunteers helped with the first steps to the game development world. For 7 months of hard working and evaluation process, competitors give their best until the most expected moment of the year. The big final ceremony, where the indie development work comes together as one. It's at the final that we get to know the best games and where we find out who is the winner of Game Jam Plus, the Game of the Year. A meeting place for all the main agents of the game development industry. Big producers, publishers, national, international, and indie game studios, investors, partnerships, developers, artists, and much more. Be part of those who believe. Help us to build this event, which is made by the community for the community. Join us. Be part of the Game Jam Plus Big Final. Game Jam Plus, devs in the world. Be our plus one.
Is my mic open already? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So this is me. So sad that I'm going to leave you. I'm going to miss you so much that I am trying to make it longer. Let's see. Things that happens. Just joking. So thank you for watching us on our warm up, and we are going to start another special talk. And this is the day of the Gen, so take the last hints to start and to make an amazing game or to join the industry, whatever it serves for you. So, no more waiting. I'm here to invite you, Vanessa. Please come to the stage.
Hi, everybody.
Vanessa.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
Hello. Thank you for coming here today. So, what are you going to share with us?
Well, today I'm going to talk to you about what is it like to be a producer for video games, and especially a producer in the motion capture field. And I'm also hoping to give you some career development tips that I have collected along my own personal journey.
Yeah, being a producer is a job that is growing recently. I've seen so many companies hiring producers, and it's so important on the industry, but not everyone knows this profession. So have the stage, it's yours, and have a nice out. See you later.
Thank you, Janine. Yeah, so I would just like to start thanking everyone in Game Jam Plus for inviting me to be here today, and also my colleagues at EA for allowing me the time to come and share with you some of the things that I've learned. As I said, I'm going to be talking to you today about what does it mean to be a producer for video games, and also how you can apply your skills towards the motion capture field, right? So I'm going to start sharing with you my presentation. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Leo. I'm just going to remove. And let's start. So let me just tell you a little bit about me. I am Vanessa. I am a capture producer at EA Vancouver. I have been active for 12 years approximately in the entertainment field. I have gone through many different activities in entertainment. I am an original soundtrack nerd. I love music for video games. I occasionally play violin and take pictures of things, and I am definitely a crazy cat lady. So that is the one thing that I definitely am. You can see some of my qualifications here on the side. I have a bachelor's degree in social communications through PUC-HEO. I also have a few degrees in entertainment management business. And, you know, these don't really sound like video game credentials, right? And the things that I've done are also not all of them in video games, right? So these are all movies and TV shows. So am I really thrilled that these things are in my portfolio? Like, absolutely. But if I were to tell you that, you know, this was my plan all along, that I wanted to do all these things, I would be lying, because I set out to work in cinematics, and VFX just really happened for me. So I would never have gotten where I am today had I not given the opportunity to, you know, embrace an adjacent path that I hadn't thought about. So how did I get here? So I'm sharing with you now a timeline of my career. But let me tell you first what the blue dots and the red dots are. The blue dots represent every time I was employed, and the red dots represent every time I was unemployed through my career. Okay, so I started off in film. I went to college for film because I wanted to craft stories that would connect people, right? And my first gig was actually on a movie set. It was an indie film that actually ended up doing very well for itself. I did a co-op in film production. I worked on other productions as well. And I just started to realize that those were very long hours. Compensation was really poor. And to complement my budget, I started looking into other things that I found interesting. And that's how I ended up working at Brazil Game Show as a freelancer for 2 years. And there I would meet the people who would, you know, take me in for the first significant shift in my career path. That was back in 2012. So in 2012, I worked for this company that I'm not going to say their name, but I worked for them producing an event. And so I produced the content for it. I produced animated backgrounds, talent management, production design. And through this process, I met some amazingly accomplished professionals that were the speakers. And in preparing for the talks, I heard about advanced animation, visual effects, and motion capture, and all of these very interesting things that I had never heard about. So I started asking questions, and many of them came back with the feedback that given the context of the industry in Brazil at the time, it would probably be a good idea for me to pursue credentials in maybe the US or in Canada, that I could apply for jobs, right? That you need to have some sort of international credential if you're going to join that industry. So unfortunately, that company went under, and as you can see here, I became unemployed just after that. And I had a lot of time to spare, and by the middle of 2013, as you know, The Last of Us came out. And I play that, obviously, and it just started making sense to me that the connections to the games that I loved were all in storytelling. They were all in the cinematics. They were all in the story. And I started to research a lot about it and discovered that the workflows were kind of similar to a film set. They could be similar. So my experience would somewhat be transferred across these fields. And then I decided that I wanted to be in cinematics. Like, nothing else would make me as happy professionally as being in cinematics. So in 2014, I took a shot at applying for a scholarship and went into incredible amounts of debt to move to Vancouver. And I took a 1-year program at VFS, and then the job prospects in Vancouver were just absolutely amazing. And I really didn't want to leave here anymore. But I ran out of money, and I ran out of permits, and I had to go back to Brazil, which is my original country. So it was really hard because I felt like after all of this struggle, after all of this upslope, I had hit a hard wall, and I saw myself back exactly where I had left. I had no job, I had nowhere to pay my bills, and there were no suitable prospects for me career-wise, and it was a very difficult decision to make. And then after, the first month went by, I reached out to my postgrad colleagues, looking for opportunities and, trying to make connections. And thankfully, one of them offered me a job, and I would be a digital marketing manager for a fantastic music artist for around 10 months, because in December that year, I had the opportunity to come back to Canada. And you see that I just said 2015, and the next stage in here is 2018. That's because there was a lot of waiting. I couldn't work for a long time. There were a lot of things that I was waiting for, and it would take me around 2 years, 3 years almost, to come back to the job market. And it was really difficult, right? Because when you stay away for so long, it's very hard to continue to prove your capabilities. So I started off, as soon as I could find a job, I found a job at the mall, and I started applying for numerous entry-level positions in games. And I finally gave in and applied to VFX, and spent a year and a half in Method Studios as an operations assistant. And great part of my credits for movies are as an operations assistant, right? I wasn't really in production. But at some point, I decided that I wanted to move back to production. I really enjoyed being in operations, but it wasn't my long-term goal. So I shifted over to Encore VFX, and I became a production coordinator for visual effects. Also during that year, I had my first interview with the department that I now belong to. And I was an entry-level job. I got the job, but I had to visit my family, and unfortunately, we couldn't sync up my start date. So I felt like I finally had gotten it, I didn't get it, and I needed to start over again. So I would come back to EA, but I would come back in another team for another project, for another sort of job, of work, should I say. So I finally joined games in 2019 as an assistant producer for FIFA 20 and FIFA 21. And it was a contract position, so depending on where you are in the world, the arrangements for jobs can really vary. And here in Vancouver, most of the industry works on a contract basis, right? Meaning that you can work for a certain company, for a certain studio, but you're only hired for a brief period of time. And my original contract was 18 months with EA. And then during this time, I interviewed for the Create Capture once more. And it was a promotion for me, would be a promotion for me if I got that job. I went through all of the stages of the interviews, and I didn't get the job. And by the end of 2020, when my contract as an assistant producer would be over, COVID had hit, opportunities were very scarce, and I wouldn't be able to stay at EA anymore. So I went unemployed for 3 months, and then I joined an independent studio here in Vancouver as an associate producer. So that was a career jump for me that I wasn't expecting, and it was very welcome. It had nothing to do with motion capture again, but I was still in games, and I was running the art department. So I learned a lot about art pipelines, asset pipelines, and that is knowledge that I leveraged to get finally to the position where I am now, which is a capture producer at EA again. So this is my brief summary, my brief career summary. So now that I am a capture producer, I want to talk to you about what is it that I do. So my work revolves around two different axes. I work as a producer, which means that I organize people, I balance processes, I pay attention to budgets, schedules, scope, and I promote communication across departments, among other things. And I use all of these skills applied to the motion capture field. So if you're not aware of what motion capture is in the context of games, motion capture is a type of technology that supports animators in achieving more in less time. It's also a crucial part of cinematics development. It is the technology behind all of the performances that you've seen lately, pardon me, on narrative-driven games, right? So let me tell you a little bit about the production side first. So what is a producer? A producer is someone that should be hired, but unfortunately is not hired all of the time. So essentially, a producer is a project manager, okay? A producer will focus on communication, organization, implementation of processes. They can also facilitate productivity. And, this is really the basics of what a producer does. A good producer, okay, a good producer will also be a creativity enabler on top of all the things that I just said about project management, because a producer can empower creatives by fostering a safe sandbox environment. So our job is to make sure that everything is working properly, that people have their support systems in place so they can focus on their specialties. They can focus on being creative. They can focus on solving issues, not having to worry about the tools that, provide them with the stability they need to work. Oops, sorry, not yet that. So a good producer is also your frontline support and strategist, okay? A producer is the link in your team that will be in the center of the tug of war, communicating executives, sometimes executive expectations, transforming that information into actionable items and giving it back to your team, okay, to your creative team, to your game team. So the producer holds a holistic view over a project and clout over decision making, okay? Also, depending on the personality of that person, that sets the tone for the workplace and the culture of your studio. So it's very important when hiring a producer to ensure that they are on par with the culture of your studio. And finally, a good producer is an adaptable person, okay? We are quick thinkers. We have to have negotiation skills that are above average. It is easier to be a producer if you're a people person. It is not necessary, but it is a huge help. And you have to understand how to navigate interpersonal relationships, okay? This is a very, very important aspect of a good producer. Finally, we are easily recognizable by our avatar on Slack, because this is literally what our lives are like. Everything is fine every day until it burns up. So if you see someone with this avatar on Slack, it's probably a producer. So I've told you all that. And what does a day in the life of a producer looks like? So commonly across any sort of studio or production that you belong to, your day-to-day will consist of a lot of interactions. You'll have a lot of calls, you'll take a lot of notes, you'll relay information to multiple teams that need to know multiple different parts of everything that you just heard. And that is how you go and make micro decisions that will affect the project overall. So I know that everyone has this idea that, when big decisions are made in a project, everyone is sitting across this very long table and, everyone is shouting and, having, heated conversations. But that's, in my experience, not really how things happen. Usually the most important things that end up being transformed into features or into an element that shapes the game, they consist of micro decisions that you make every day on simple conversations with people. Okay, so that is what's so important to take notes. And commonly, you'll also see the producers usually have 1 or 2 episodes of tachycardia per week. It shouldn't be the rule. It's just something that, I put there because it's funny, because if you're a producer, you know that I'm not technically lying, but it's also not necessary, for a great work environment to promote tachycardia on your employees. So these are the common ground aspects. So particularities are going to change according to your department, according to your project, according to your studio, because every single one of those is individual. So one project will never be like the next. You may create tools, you may create workflows and processes that work very well for you, but you have to be open to change because they may not apply to the next project that you're working on. So say that you developed an entire workflow for a narrative-driven game, and your next next project is an FPS. Nothing that would work for your creative team, for one of your creative teams, let's say it that way, would necessarily work for this project. Okay, so be able to learn and change. And also, if you're joining a new studio, if you're joining a new project, understand what are the report structures within that organization. Okay, understand who is working under you, who is your peer, who is the person you have to report to, who is your manager reporting to. It's a very important tip to have, and understand how those people like to receive information. Some of us like detailed information, some of us like objective bullet points, and you can get, you can get points with your manager very easily if you just understand how they like being communicated to. So great, I've made the sell. You want to abandon everything you're currently doing and just be a producer tomorrow. Where do I start? Okay, so I would suggest in any sort of scenario where you're trying to enter a field, start examining your transferable skills first, okay? So in the case of a producer, formal education to be a game producer is still very rare. Programs exist out there that will give you the tools for this, but they don't usually come in a format that is made for producers, okay? You probably have to go through a game design program or something similar. In my case, I went through entertainment business management programs that provided me with a strong suit of project management training, which is one of the main skills that drive my position. So that was very important and valuable to me. So on that note, if you haven't yet, invest in some project management knowledge and certificates, okay? If you can afford the certificates, do it. They hold a lot of clout when you are applying for jobs, but they are not necessary. Understand that you need to learn about Agile, you need to learn about Scrum, you need to learn about Kanban, and if none of these words make sense to you, it means that you need to start studying project management right now, okay? Then take all of this project management knowledge that you have, pair it up with a technical field that will get you places. So if you are passionate about animation, you don't have to know everything about animating a character, animating, a weapon, to be a producer in an art department. What you need to know is the pipeline for that asset. So what are the stages that this asset has to go through before it gets integrated into the game? That is what you need to know. You don't need to dominate the making of the thing. You need to understand the processes. You are a process person. You are not a deliver person as a producer, okay? And again, train and understand what are your soft skills. They're always going to be important for you, okay? So if you have worked on retail, You probably have a wonderful set of soft skills. That's one of the hardest ways to learn soft skills. It's dealing with customer service. Okay, so that is just an example. There are many others. So as Janine was also talking in the beginning of our conversation, why should your team hire a producer? So I'm just not going to answer this question fully. I'm going to leave you with a question. Would you hire a programmer to be an environment artist in your team? Would you hire someone that is highly specialized on a technical skill to work on another field that requires technical knowledge as well? I don't think you would. I think that you would understand that this is a huge risk for your project, right? So don't do that to your producer. Your TD, your technical director, may be very good at organizing their own department. It does not mean that that person will be a good producer, okay? A producer has a holistic view across the project. So make sure that you invest some time into understanding how your team could value from having a producer. Maybe you just need them for 1 or 2 departments. Maybe you don't need it across your team. Maybe your team is too small and just one person could manage all of the departments that you have. As I said, every project is individual. So take a look at yours and understand how a producer could serve you, okay? That is the main tip I have for you here. So we've talked about production. We've returned to this slide here. So I told you about everything project management related in my job. I'm going to now tell you about the motion capture aspect of my job, okay? So motion capture. Motion capture is serving a multitude of fields in entertainment from a giant casserole, okay? Technology is there for every single field to use. You just have to understand what is the best one for you, okay? So when I started taking interest in motion capture, even the most basic information was very hard for me to access. So I'm going to give you some basic knowledge of it that you could use to start a conversation with someone. It's not going to be a deep dive because this subject on itself could, rent an entire workshop around it. So I'm going to try and stick to the basics here. So what is motion capture? Motion capture is a medium for extracting high quality, complex animation data, okay? At the end of the day, this is all that is. Motion capture is also versatile, okay? You can find support for your pipeline across various families of motion capture technology that would probably be compatible with your budget. We're going to get into some of the families of, I'm just calling them families because it's easier to understand, but there are different types, different methods, okay? So if you hear me using any of those words, they mean the same. There are versatile solutions, as we're going to get into very soon, and motion capture is also a highly customizable workflow. Okay, so the methods, as I said, will vary, and because there's so much support for pre-production, editorial, and post-production spaces right now, you'll find that sometimes one of these stages is going to cost you more than the other, but there are, opportunities for you to save some money on your budget and be innovative in the way that you are working with your cinematics or your animations for your game. Okay, so let's go through a quick summary of verbiage that you can use when talking to people about motion capture. So motion capture and mocap are usually the same thing. Okay, if you search Google for mocap, you're going to find tons of results about motion capture. That is just very, very vanilla. So PCAP. PCAP is technically also motion capture, but PCAP is a more comprehensive term for performance capture, which means body data, face data, voice data, and if this is something that we can quantify, artistic interpretation of a character. Okay, usually PCAP encompasses a bodysuit, a helmet that we call HMC, which is the head-mounted camera, and a bunch of other film set technologies and props around it. I'm going to give you a few examples later. Also, the styles that I was talking about. So we have optical systems that are usually the most expensive ones. Well, they used to be. Now that we have volumetric, volumetric is very versatile. You can do it at a very tiny enclosed space, or just go full-blown visual production style like The Mandalorian did. And you can also have non-optical systems. So optical and non-optical, we're going to talk about them today. Volumetric, I'm not going to talk about it today, but there's a bunch of good material that you can look for on websites like Unreal Engine's website, Lucasfilm website about the backstage of The Mandalorian. There's a bunch of good information out there that is easily accessible for you on volumetric capture. Okay? So let's just quickly talk about the methods. So as I said, optical and non-optical systems. Optical systems entail that data stems from relationships between markers and cameras. So this is probably the most familiar reference for motion capture that you've seen. Two differences between the active and passive optical systems. Active systems also have markers. Both of them have markers, right? But on the active systems, the light comes out of the marker. So the markers are also LED lamps that are tracked by cameras, okay? This is useful because it is outdoor friendly, it is adaptable to lighting conditions, and as you can see in the example here, I have Mark Ruffalo on the set for Avengers Endgame, and that is an actual location that he is being shot, right? This is a diner, and they put him into the space to capture his performance as the Hulk. So you will understand why this is more outdoor friendly than the passive markers just now. So passive markers are coated with a substance that is reflective, okay? So on the passive markers, the light is not emitted from the suit. The light is coming from a rig of lights, a rig of cameras that is surrounding the talent and emitting light towards the talent. And the camera is capturing the reflection of those dots as data, okay? So as any environment of visual production that you can control every aspect of it, this is going to be the most accurate form of motion capture available right now, strictly because it is controllable, right? So because all the AAA studios usually use passive optical systems, you'll notice that there is a verse pipeline for controlled environments everywhere that you go, okay? And so these suits that you see here, this is Christopher Judge and Sunny Suljic as Kratos and Boy Atreus on God of War 2018. You can see that, as I said, they have the marker and they have the head-mounted camera. The thing that you see right here, this is the camera. This is facing their face, and their faces are marked with either very, very tiny reflective markers or pens that will then, this data will then be exported into tracking, and a group of animations will take care of that. But I will take you there when I talk about pipelines, okay? And just a quick look here on the non-optical systems and markerless systems, because this is the most popular among low-budget teams, because the suit that you see here, the XSense suit, it is not the only technology available for non-optical systems, but it is one of the most popular ones, okay? So this is a system not dependent on cameras, which means It is outdoor friendly and it's very portable. It comes into a little suitcase that you can take anywhere. And the technology itself is a combination of gyroscopes, magnetic triangulation, and accelerometers that are embedded on the suit. So the suit has little straws under the layers. There's two layers, a layer that is touching the body of the actor. Then there's a hollow pocket across multiple areas of the body, and then another layer of clothing to keep that in place. So you can see that here on her leg, you can see a few markers here, right? So this is just under the first layer of the suit. So as I said, very accessible, not very accessible, the most accessible of all the options if you're on a budget, and also outdoor friendly, very, very versatile for small productions. Okay, so let me just take a sip of water here. And I've prepared for you today a performance capture sample pipeline. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. It's simple because it doesn't mean that what I'm going to present to you here is exactly how things are done all the time. Okay, depending on your method, you may find that these steps mean different things. The technology applied to these steps mean different things. So speaking on very, very broad terms, like big picture kind of thing, these are the stages that you will typically go through. So you have pre-production, you have your shoot days, you have editorial, solving, and polishing. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few sample processes and few sample software that you can use and give you some context on what every one of these steps mean. So pre-production. Pre-production, if you have any experience with producing content for YouTube, or maybe you are a podcaster, or maybe you've been on a film set, the nature of the processes that we take care of in pre-production are very similar, okay, to content creating. So during pre-production, you are going to try and trace a map for every solution you're going to use along the road, okay? You're going to do your best guess, your best work to guess everything that you're going to need. So you're going to write a script, you're going to have your script block, you're going to start talking about casting. Who are going to be your characters? What type of technology are we going to use? What does our post-production look like? And what are the steps we need to take before we get there? So a way that I like to take care of pre-production is drafting. What is your end goal? Like, what is your most MVP scenario for your game, for your project? And then work backwards from that. See what are the steps that you have to take to get there. This perspective will give you a good insight on what is possible, what is not possible, and also alternatives that you can creatively use to achieve similar goals. Okay, so these are the simple processes that I just talked about. So as with regards to software, if you're doing a game, for making a game like we're assuming you are, you'll probably want to take a look at Celtx for your script management, for your creative script. Okay, I'm not talking about programming, I'm talking about cinematics, creative script. So Celtx is a script drafting software that is free online. It's full of tools and capabilities and exporting formats. So if you are on a tight budget, I would definitely recommend checking that out. You're also going to need your engine. So at this point, you need to realize what engine are you going to use, because every single tech solution will depend on your engine, okay? And that includes the post and animation software that you're going to use. You need to understand that they are compatible, right? You don't want to deal with that after you have all the data. So let's say you've done everything on pre-production, you're confident, everything's going well, you're excited for your shoot day, and it comes. So during shoot day, you should be focusing on the data, okay? When you're working with motion capture, your goal is not the shoot day. Your goal is the quality of the data that you extract from it, okay? So make sure that once you get to your set, once you get to your volume, do your tech pass. Check your markers, check your software, check your talent, check your crew. Make sure that everything on the pipeline is working fine before you start capturing your data, okay? Softwares that you can use for that, it depends, again, on what technology you are using for capture. I'm just going to throw some names here to entice you to research about it later. But you can use something like Shogun, which is real-time tracking of the data that you are collecting. You can use, pandemic times. You can use Zoom or Slack or any other type of software that promotes communication. Again, you're going to be using your engine if you want a real-time integration or at least some real-time previs of what you're capturing. And you also need a data management software. Industry standard is ShotGrid. ShotGrid is through VFX, cinematics, it's everywhere. It is very expensive, but you can train on it for free. If you download the software, they have a sample project that you can train on and understand how it works. It is not hard to use. It is hard to master, okay? So if you're into the field, go study ShotGrid. It's the best tip I can give you about this. So you've shot everything, you've captured your data, and now your data is not, people moving anymore. It's just, it is data that exists somewhere that needs to be imported. So that means it's editorial time. So through editorial, you're going to agree on a naming convention check. You're going to agree on a shot selection by prioritization, possibly, right? You're going to have your very good shots, your shots, and your very bad shots. So this is the time where you're going to discard everything that doesn't serve you and import everything that you will be working on for solving and polishing, okay? If you have outsourcing partners, this is where you need to start talking to them about how would they like to receive their data, okay? So some softwares that you can use for that, again, as I said, ShotGrid, any software that would promote safe exchanging of files. Dropbox is just an example, but there are other secure softwares out there that allow you to package and transfer data. And finally, keep records of everything you do. Repeat after me. Keep records of everything you do. You can do that via spreadsheets, via email, via whiteboard. I don't care how you do it. Just have information somewhere that you've sent out this to someone at this date. You're waiting on things to come back. This is the best thing that you can do for yourself as a producer, is keep track of information, okay? So now that your artists and your outsource partners have the data, it starts the solving part, right? So solving is just transforming any sort of little jitters, any sort of defects, for lack of a better word, that you have on your original capture data. You solve that, you make that smooth, and you track that to your final target, to your character, to your actor resemblance, whatever that means for you in your project, okay? So to do that, you're probably going to need, again, some of the repeats that we've seen before, but also this is where your 3D pipeline starts coming in, right? This is where you need your usual suspects on 3D modeling, right? So it's time to look into Maya, it's time to look into 3D Max, and that is a process that is very smoothly, hopefully, carried over to polishing. So polishing is the difference between projects that, is the difference between animations that look very refined versus animations that look very basic, right? So I used Hellblade as an example on my first slide of this. Hellblade was made by Ninja, forgot their name, but there's Ninja in there. And they were a very tiny independent studio at the time, okay? that didn't impede them from making an amazing game because they had a lot of time for polishing. They captured the data and they took a lot of time of correcting it and perfecting it and lighting it correctly, right? So this is where your whole 3D pipeline comes in. Your riggers, your trackers, your texture and lighting artists, your compositors, right? Like this is where the pipeline kind of transforms into a VFX pipeline. So you came all the way from a real world experience to a visual effects experience, right? So the software that you're going to use, the software that you are going to want to use for that is your 3D pipeline software. Is your Maya, is your 3D Max, is your engine, again, when compositing, when importing assets, right? Or Substance Painter for your textures, Nuke for your compositing on your cinematics. There are many variables, okay? And just this slide alone would be enough to have a full day workshop on. So I'm not going to extend myself too much in here because we're almost out of time. And I want to give you time for questions as well. So you love all of this, right? This is a similar slide than we've seen before. I love all of this. I just want to come in. So what is the first thing you do? You look into your transferable skills, right? So if you know how to rig, if you know how to track, if you know how to animate, there is space for you in the 3D, the polishing or tracking pipeline, right? If you are a technical cinematographer or you like photography, there is space for you on shoot days. There is space for you as a director of cinematography, of cinematics, right? If you are a rotoscoping specialist, you work with actually the beginnings of motion capture. So you understand what the prospect of the final result entails. So you could also be a valuable addition to a team. But if none of this is you, if you have none of these experiences, but you still want to join, I would possibly suggest moving first into adjacent careers, okay? If you're starting from zero, go look into adjacent careers first. Go look into making yourself a software engineer. Go work in VFX. Go be on a film set. Go be a TA, okay? These are all valuable transferable skills that you can use to your advantage when applying for a job as a motion capture specialist somewhere, okay? All right, so we are approaching the end, and as I said, I still want to give you some time for questions. So I'm just trying to go really quickly about this one here, just leaving you with some general tips for your future selves. So I know this is a word many people don't like to hear, but networking is important, and it does not mean turning yourself into someone that you are not, going to places to have drinks and be an extroverted if you're an introverted person. That is not what networking means. Networking just means talk to people, okay? In my case, because my main field of operation is a producer, I spent a lot of time making connections on LinkedIn, making connections on meetups, right? Because that's how I can tell people about my experience. If you're an artist, that may just mean have an account on Behance, have an account on ArtStation. Go show your work out there. Go talk to people that have similar skills to you. Find a mentor while you're at it, okay? Reach out to people that you are curious about, people that have career paths that are interesting to you. Go talk to them. They're not going to bite you, and they are surprisingly friendly. They might even actually want to talk to you. Look at that. What a novelty. So go and try that out, okay? And study your field, especially if you're into technology. Technology changes incredibly fast all the time. If you would have told me that The Mandalorian was going to be a thing 5 years ago, I would have laughed at your face. And yet, here we are, right? So make sure that you are on par with what the industry is doing. Independently of being an indie studio, understand what the AAA studios are doing, understand where they're coming from, and vice versa, okay? If you're working on a large firm on a large project, understand that innovation in your field is going to come from the indie developers. Go see what they're doing, okay? Every experience is good experience. Frame your job to tailor to your goals, okay? You may not be at your dream job right now. You may not be working at a field that will, contribute to your resume in a certain way, but you still have ownership over what you do every day, okay? Your job is your responsibility as well. If you're demotivated, if you have a goal that you don't see yourself achieving, go understand, do a little exercise and understand what can you extract from your current job that can leverage you a better position in the future. If you want to be a producer, how can you exercise project management at your current job, right? That's just an example. And so these are the final ones. Do not panic, okay? It will take time. Do not get discouraged. Be open to change. It is natural that career paths are not linear paths anymore, okay? I'm telling you this from experience. This is something that has been a point of anxiety for me for a long time. So careers are not linear paths anymore. Do not panic about it. Sometimes you need to take a tangent to go where you need to go, okay? If the door is not open, as my mom would say, take the window, all right? You're still going to be in the room. You got there in a different way, but that could actually be something that works on your favor, okay? And your work routine matters. Be sensible to how you feel when you get there. Be sensible to what you're doing, because what you like consuming may actually not be what you like making, okay? You may like to play FPSs, but producing an FPS may actually not be the best environment for you, okay? So don't be discouraged. That is okay. It doesn't mean that you are not good at what you do. It means that your consumer profile is different from your working profile, okay? And with that, I'm going to wrap this up and open the floor for any questions. And once again, thank you for having me today. And it's been an absolute pleasure. If you have any questions or any observations you would like to talk to me about, I am going to be here for as long as Janine allows me to. So, yeah. Oh, okay. I just realized that there was a comments session here. All right. So, Juliana, where can I find those kinds of programs, best institutions? I think you're talking about education, right? So, depending on where you are, it varies a lot. But if you are interested in international education, look into Full Sail University. Look into Vancouver Film School. The program I had there was actually very good. It doesn't exist anymore, but you can still find game design programs. And they do have special scholarships for women in games, which is very important. A few Brazilians have undergone that project. There is an artist that was working on Super Meat Boy called Lala Fuchs, and she was from PUC as well as I am, and she was the first recipient of this scholarship. Okay, so go see them. Also look into Game Career Guide. This website has a bunch of good tips and tricks and institutions that you can select for your education. That would be my main tip for you with regards to that. Okay. Would there be, this is from Caro, would there be any way to make a more indie motion capture with some features that are more accessible to low resource studios? Absolutely. So, we've talked about the cost of purchasing, talked briefly about the cost of purchasing investing on a inertia suit, right? So look into rentals, okay? Look into renting a suit. Look into maybe partnering up with a student or a new business that is trying to implement and establish themselves in that field. Try doing that. That, you know, you would be surprised with how positive these interactions can actually go. I would say that your best bet if you are on a low budget is still the inertia suits. There are some volumetric alternatives that are also accessible, but they are proprietary to studios in North America right now. I don't think there's anything in South America that is similar, but those would be my main tips for you on that. Another one from Carl. So what is the casting of the actors that will be part of the motion capture done? Oh, I see. So you have interest in being an actress for motion capture. Fantastic. Okay, so casting for motion capture is very different than casting for an actual TV show or movies or something like that, because your physical resemblance may not be what is imported into the game, right? So, for example, in the image here, we have Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, and they are Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. None of the final characters look like them, but the facial expressions of the characters were imported directly from their resemblance, right? So what you need to do when you are auditioning for motion capture is actually exaggerate your movements, okay? So exaggerate your facial expressions a little bit. You don't need to go like full-blown, you know, scary person, but exaggerate them a little bit. Train that on a mirror, right? Make that part of your training routine as an actor. Your body expressions, right? There are some very good artists. If you're in Rio, there are very good circus schools that can give you some insight on, you know, body movement, and they train you as an actor with your body, which can be a very interesting skill for you to present. If you know how to do martial arts, if you are specialized on, I don't know, parkour or you know, skating, there's always something that is valuable to put in your resume. So invest on your fitness and invest on your facial expressions, on finessing your facial expressions. And just to make sure that I'm clear, when I say invest in your fitness, I'm saying invest in acquiring physical skills that make you stand out. Okay, I'm not talking about physical appearance. I'm talking about your physical skills. Okay. Next one. Do we have another one? Oh, I imagine it's very expensive to do motion capture with actors. How is the cost of the production calculated per minute? So no, it's not calculated per minute. It is a bucket of different topics that you need to consider, okay? So when you budget for motion capture, you need to budget your technology. So what is the method that you're going to use? Are you using passive markers? Are you using active markers? What is the cost of working within a studio with passive markers? What is the cost of maybe renting an inertia suit, right? That is one of the costs that you're going to have. Then you have to budget in the crew to do that for you. So who is your editorial person? Who is your data wrangler? Who is your assistant? How much do they cost to your production? Productions are usually budgeted. Well, there are a couple of methods, but if you are on film, you are budgeted by week. If you are part of a game studio, you may budget it. Your time may be budgeted by, I don't know, monthly or quarterly. It depends. But if you're an indie person, I would suggest in the studio, I would suggest budget it weekly, okay? Because this is probably just one capsule of your project that you're not going to worry about in the future. So look into your crew, look into your technology, and then look into your talent, okay? Because these people, your crew and your technology are going to be crucial for your final result. Your talent, you can compromise a little bit on your talent if you need to. You can be creative with your choices, but your technicians are your technicians. Their set of skills is going to be much harder to harness elsewhere. Okay, so that would be my tip for you on that. Do we have any more questions? Oh, I see one from Leo here. So how was the process of leaving Brazil to work with games in another country? It was hard. It was difficult, mostly because so much of this process is out of your control. You know, like you think you have everything under control, you plan yourself and blah, 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 and then really nothing happens the way that you expect them to happen. And it can be, as I said on my timeline example, it can be a long time until you get into the area that you invested your time and effort to move to, right? So don't get discouraged. If this is something that you want to do, make sure that you read a lot about it. Stay out of forums. Stay out of forums. People go to forums to talk about their anxiety and talk about their, cases gone wrong. No one that has had a successful case will go back into the forum to talk about it because they're too happy living their lives outside of the internet. Okay, so don't look for your advice on forums. Go look into a professional that can give you that advice, or out of curiosity, read material from official websites that can give you tangible information on how to immigrate and what you need to do. Okay, yeah, that would be my tip on that. So yeah, I think I'm all done. So we are also almost 5 minutes past the time, and I would like to thank you again for being with me today. Thank you for your engagement and your questions. I hope that you've taken something of interest out of this presentation. And yeah, thanks again, Game Jam Plus, for having me here, and best of luck with your projects. And until next time, see you then.
Olá, manas e manos.
You are invited for the next edition of Game Jam Plus.
Quer criar o próximo grande jogo indie?
I'd like to invite my fellow flyover states and the rest of the world to come jam with us.
Mi nombre es Brian Hernández de Cartago, Costa Rica.
Patos de Minas, Minas Gerais.
Calgary, Canada.
Goiás,
São Luís.
Iran.
Liga Sul de Minas.
Portugal,
Brasília. México. Salvador. Macedônia.
Uberaba, Minas Gerais.
São José, Costa Rica.
Uberlândia.
La Paz, Bolivia.
Manaus, Amazonas.
United States Midwest.
Atlanta,
Slovenia.
Engenheiro Paulo Franchim.
Game Jam Plus? O que é Game Jam Plus?
En donde desarrolladores, músicos, artistas podrán crear su propio juego con un enfoque de negocios.
Participants from all around the world come together.
É o local onde suas ideias tomam forma.
Y me complace mucho invitarlos a este gran evento.
I feel thrilled and blessed to have such an opportunity to be a part of this.
And I want you to unlock this achievement too.
Que es un evento internacional que va a tomar lugar del 8 al 10 de octubre.
from October 8th to 10th.
Entre el 8 y el 10 de octubre.
Dias 8 ao dia 10 de outubro.
This October, from the 8th to the 10th.
Dia 8 ao dia 10 de outubro.
Quiero invitarlos a formar parte de esta gran comunidad internacional.
It's going to be an incredible opportunity to make some games, meet some amazing people.
Espero haber más personas de todo el mundo participando de este gran evento.
Hope to see you there.
Participa, be our plus one.
Would you be our plus one?
Visita наших плюс 1. Be a plus one.
Будете мой плюс 1.
Be our plus one.
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 Join us, be our plus one.
Be our plus one.